We're here, myself, Al Cintron, Bryan Fonseca. We have Brian Lewis, our great reporter for the Post Sports. We're going to bring him on in 1 second, but just want to let the people know Knicks lose here 100-94 in game 2 of their first round series with Detroit. Tough loss for the Knicks. Series now tied at 1. We'll go back to Detroit. Game 3 is going to be on Thursday. Game 4 will be Sunday, and now we know a Game 5 will be necessary as well in the series. I did predict the Knicks to win in 5, and we'll see how the Knicks did. But this is a game where the Knicks were down by as many as 13 points. They battle back in the fourth quarter to tie it, but they fall short 100-94. So, joining us now here on the post-game show from the New York Post, the great sports reporter. I got Brian Lewis. Brian, how you doing? I want to let you know, before we get into stuff, you talked about last time how the great snack while you're watching the game is beef patty. Boy, got beef patty right here. I came prepared today. You know what I'm saying? I came prepared. It's a great snack. How you doing tonight, man? Good?
All right. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Can't complain. What did you make of what you saw from the Knicks in this game? Because this was a game that was very sloppy, particularly in the first half. What did you make of how the Knicks played in this one?
Listen, I'm sure there'll probably be a lot of complaints from Knicks fans about the officiating. I didn't have a problem with how the game was called. I had a problem with the way the Knicks responded to how the game was called. Listen, I grew up with I came into the business like with the Patrick Ewing, Oakley Knicks. I don't mind a playoff game that's physical. That happens to fit Detroit's DNA. Detroit went right up to the line of physicality and sometimes stepped over it. The Knicks did not do that. The Knicks did not respond to that physicality. I didn't love. Now, I liked initially the idea, especially when you don't have Stewart in the game, of trying to go inside to Cat. I had no problem with that. But what ended up happening was then you got a lot of standing around, and you ended up with just the offense kind of went into a funk as guys are watching, and there was then a lot of one-on-one stuff, and that didn't work. And then obviously once that happened, you saw what I think Cat was scoreless the second half.
Scoreless and only put up 2 field goal attempts.
Yes.
Yeah. Now let me. Before I have another question. We'll get to campaign in a second.
Dumbass.
And our guy Al here was not happy with that with Karl-Anthony Towns. How much of this should be on? It's not all on Karl-Anthony Towns, but how much of this should be on Cat? And how does he only get up 2 field goal attempts here in the second half, Brian?
I don't know, because all right, you've got a 20. I won't even say that it was really just Duran outplaying him, because most of the time when you looked up, he had a matchup with Tobias. I mean, and they were perfectly happy to let Tobias guard him.
And that's a problem.
Yes, that's a serious problem.
Yeah.
So it's not even just him getting outplayed by the kid. I mean, Tobias, I don't know. I mean, how many pounds is Tobias giving up to him? How many inches is Tobias giving up to him? And they were perfectly happy with letting Tobias, who is not the greatest defender in the history of the world, guarding Cat. And Cat doing nothing with it.
Nothing.
Right.
So, no, it's not all on him, but a lot of it has to be laid at his feet, though.
Yeah, that's something that we've been talking about, Brian, where like they have the post up for him to take advantage of the mismatch on Tobias Harris. And then the Pistons are late at sending help. So he has a run to the basket that he just doesn't take. He'll pass out of it too soon. He doesn't take the shot. There are times where he allows Tobias Harris to let him take a bad shot, where it's just a turnaround fadeaway, and it's like 19, 20 feet out, and it's contested. It's a deep 2, and the Pistons will sign for that every time. Do you think that Tom Thibodeau maybe has to scheme this differently, like try to get Cat into some other positions, or is this just Cat being aggressive and trying to get himself in other positions?
I mean, eventually this has to fall on him.
Right.
I mean, eventually this has to be Cat realizing the matchup that he has. Now, to be fair, this is him, right? I mean, this is how we've seen him play. This was not.
Right.
This isn't an aberration. It's not like all of a sudden he turned into this. This is what he is.
But
So,
Brian, we saw in game one a Cat that looked pretty decent defensively, seemed to be somewhat aggressive.
He's not that every game though. Like that's
if that's your point.
That's
then
why
yes,
that's
okay.
why Minnesota was like, I mean, if you want him here.
Look, Brian.
Listen, and I think, by the way, I think he's a wonderously skilled player.
Yes.
I want to be clear. I think
Right.
that's really good. But you do understand when you have him that there are days that he'll look like this. And then there are days where he will take advantage of those matchups. And then you say, oh, well, this was a breakthrough. He's had an epiphany. And then he goes back to this.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I say
That's what's going to frustrate the Knicks fan. I think the other thing the Knicks fan is frustrated about tonight, well, one of the things is Cam Payne plays 4 minutes after what we saw from him in game one, Brian. We have not heard the sound from Tom Thibodeau yet on this. Can you explain that at all? How does Cam Payne, after what he did to resurrect this team on Easter weekend, and our guy Al Cintron here is going crazy about it, how does he only get 4 minutes in this game? Can you explain this?
Well, you remember when we were talking the other day, and we were talking about the bench. And I corrected myself, and I said, well, Minnesota has a distinct advantage off the bench. And I said, well, you know what? I shouldn't say that because I don't know that the Knicks don't have the bench. I just don't know that he'll be willing to use it.
You did say that.
This is an example of what I'm talking about. I mean, and this is not just a one-off, and I'm saying this because Dennis Schroeder went off. And by the way, you have to give him his flowers. This is what you were talking about, experience. I think experience played a role. Well, the only guy on Detroit that has that kind of playoff experience, I'm talking 60, 70 games of playoff experience, he was huge for them down the stretch.
Yeah, he was big. The Knicks bench, which Al sat here with us through the whole broadcast and said that he was extremely concerned about them doing that. And, the fact they wouldn't be able to get scoring. You only get 8 bench points. They all come from Miles McBride. That's not going to get it. That's not going to get it done, Brian. The other thing I think big concern for me, we talked about this during the broadcast, is the Knicks just got hustled in a variety of ways today, particularly on the glass. I'm looking at the final rebounding numbers. The Pistons grabbed 48 rebounds. The Knicks grabbed 34, so plus 14. Plus 14 on the glass for Detroit. I kind of want to bring it back to what you said initially, Brian, where you're talking about the fact that the Knicks did not adjust to the way the officials were, refs were officiating this game. But they also didn't adjust to the way the Pistons were playing and match the energy. And really only for that 12-2 run in the fourth quarter. I mean, where else did you see them match the energy in this game? And how does this team now rebound and try to match that energy going into game 3 in the Motor City?
No, I would agree with your assessment. I mean, I would think that the Knicks would have known that Detroit would come out, A, and be physical because that's what they've been all year, and B, that they would be desperate after game 1 going the way it did. I think when you looked at that situation, you would have had to assume that the Knicks knew that Detroit would come out and punch them in the mouth. The problem is the way the game was officiated and the way things were being let go in the first half. That's fine. Was it overly consistent? No, but I think it was fairly even. Detroit was willing to walk right up to that line and then go over it. The Knicks didn't do that. The Knicks, and it's not like the Knicks didn't have the bodies to do it.
Right.
I mean, I thought Mitch played well for the minutes that he got. I wanted to see more from Mitch, especially when you consider how physical Detroit was playing and how they were letting things go. I want to see more minutes from Mitch, not fewer minutes from Mitch.
To that point, Brian, Mitchell Robinson, 20 minutes played, 7 boards and assists, did not score. but was a +3. The only other Knicks player that had a positive plus minus was Mikal Bridges, right? Only other player that had a positive plus minus. Do we see more Mitchell Robinson? Ryan, you can chime in on this too. Do we want to see more of the big lineup out there? Does Mitchell Robinson deserve more playing time in this matchup against the Pistons?
This for me, I want to
Yeah.
see more of it. I definitely want to see more of it. I don't know how many minutes they played together in this game. I think they played 9 minutes together in game 1. I want to see more of that. I want to see that tandem, and especially when you are looking for a physical presence to combat what the Pistons are doing to you. I mean, the Pistons just looked like a hungrier team, like a nastier team, and that's not a shock. That is a gritty team. That's what they've done all season. But I need to combat that. I need to match that and exceed that. And I think he probably gives you your best opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I thought Tibbs was going to close with that at one point because of what was happening on the glass and just the overall physicality that Detroit presented. Bryan, let me ask you this before we let you go. I didn't like how the Knicks started off in the fourth quarter and the third quarter where it felt like, all right, they had time to draw up something. Jalen Brunson is just an isolation. Nobody else is getting in a rhythm. He's struggling to try to get his, and then the offense kind of falls apart from there. They go on a run late, but they don't take the lead, and Detroit has just enough of an edge to finish this off. And it feels like coming out of these breaks, they need a little bit more creativity offensively. What should we expect to see when they're in Detroit this time? Do we think that the offense is going to be a little more spread out and not just Jalen Brunson dominating the ball?
Well, here's the problem. I mean, Jalen's a really, really great isolation player.
Yeah.
Right. And I get it. Here's the problem. If you're trying to use Cat, and that's fine. But this goes back to what we were talking about, the way they came out earlier in the game. When they came out and they tried to post Cat, and then everybody was standing around. It really was the same thing to what you're talking about late in the game when Jalen is going ISO and there's very little movement. There's not a lot of movement off the ball. They weren't drawing up a lot of stuff. And so now you get stagnation. And stagnation against that defense, the way they play, usually has a poor result. So I would hope that when you're seeing game 3, yeah, I would need to see more stuff drawn up. I need to see more guys running off of the ball because I don't think from what we just saw that they can expect, all right, we're going to post Cat consistently, right? And have him just cook because I don't know if I can trust him to be aggressive for 35 minutes. I don't think that that's likely. Right. So I would tend to agree with your assessment. Yes.
Al, do you have anything for Bryan? Al's been going through it through the game. Any questions?
I'm gonna try to sound as professional as possible. Can someone give a pair of what to Karl-Anthony Towns for game 3? Because I need him to see him be more aggressive in game 3, and then this oh my god and all this other nonsense crying to the ref. Can you tell the Knicks stop crying to the refs after every play? These are the playoffs. They're letting them play through it. And in New York, I grew up in the 90s with that team. We took no crap. This is stop crying for every call.
I agree with you. Those are the teams that I came into the league with, right? I don't mind that kind of basketball. I don't mind that kind of playoff ball. I like it. But here's the problem, and that's they have to respond to that. And they have a veteran team. It's not like they have a young team that should be struggling to read what's going on here. A veteran team should be able to respond to how a game is being called and adjust on the fly. That's what's disturbing me.
Yeah, I think that's bothersome. We talked about it the whole broadcast, and Al speaks a lot to, I think, all of us. Our annoyance with it is just that you got to respond. And speaking of respond, do you think the Knicks will respond the appropriate way, Brian, heading into Game 3, or are you concerned that with this loss, the way they played in this loss, they've actually given the Pistons a bit of more life here going back home?
Well, I always thought that the Pistons would get one of these two. We talked about this.
Yeah,
I thought that they would get one of these two.
Yeah.
Now, I also said I thought that as the series would go on, the Pistons would get more confident and that it was incumbent upon Tibbs to use his bench because you can wear out the starters. If this goes 7 and guys are playing 40 plus, that's going to be an issue. But I do think the Knicks will respond appropriately. I was encouraged by what I saw from Mikal.
Yep.
I was encouraged with that. On both ends of the court. Jalen, fine. I think the biggest issue, as we go back to, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, is Cat.
Huh?
I'd agree with that.
It's hard to say that he's not the biggest issue here. It's hard to come out this game that he's not the big. I think he would be number one, Brian. I think number 2 would be, what is Tom Thibodeau doing with the minutes here going forward, right? Because you basically got to look at it. Brian said this. He said that it's like he played 7 deep tonight because you can't really count the 4 minutes from Campaign and the 5 minutes you saw to Landry Shamet. Campaign didn't take a shot. Did Landry Shamet put up a shot tonight?
I don't think so.
Was he there?
And if he did, it was during a commercial break.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that now.
Landry,
oh Lord.
yeah, no.
up.
Like literally, those guys. The only thing that Campaign and Landry Shamet did tonight was both recorded a turnover. In 9 total minutes, there were 2 turnovers between the 2 of them. That is all that happened tonight. And I'm not generally down with the minutes police, but you can't be playing 7 in a playoff game. You can't defend it. You can't you can't do this in a playoff game.
If it was Game 7, maybe.
Yeah, but if you do this for games 1 through 6, what will it look like by Game 7?
What
has always been my fear.
Burn them out.
Right.
That's
a burnout
always
factor.
been my fear with this.
Right. It's the burnout factor. And let's look. I mean, just looking at these minutes, guys, every Knicks starter played 40 plus. No, sorry. Townsend played 33 minutes and Bridges played 38 minutes. 42 for OG, 44 for Jalen Brunson, 40 for Josh Hart. Like, it's not sustainable. Maybe you get a spark from one of those guys. Maybe Landry Shamet gives you a spark. Maybe, I don't know, Campaign gives you a spark. Who gave you a spark on Saturday? I'm a little perplexed, and I can't wait to see the quotes from everybody from Tom Thibodeau and what he says about that. But we'll see if the Knicks respond. It'll be interesting, Brian.
Well, I'm curious, and I don't know the severity of Stewart. I'm curious to see if he returns, whether it almost forces Tibbs to give Mitch more minutes.
That's a good point. And I think giving Mitch more minutes is something that could be good. I think we all agree with that here. But also, could we see some more minutes for Campaign? Can we see a little bit more for Landry Shamet? Not
for Landry Shamet.
I'm just trying to get baby steps.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean,
he shot 50% from 3 in April, the last month of the season. He was fantastic down the stretch.
And I think that's
I'm not ripping him. I just want to get babies. I just want some more minutes for somebody.
Yeah.
Preston Chu was there sitting on the bench too, doing nothing.
You gave more minutes to him, or maybe I get some more minutes for him.
Right. Yeah. Brian, I hear you. You're like, look, let's crawl before we walk.
That's all I'm asking.
Let's try to get some baby steps in here. Let's see what we can do. I don't know. Knicks. I understand the Knicks fan base, and we've seen it here live in the chat. I understand why the fans are disappointed. Al's very disappointed. It's a disappointing performance tonight because I don't think you look at it and say this team gave their best. I don't think you can look at it and say they fought back in the way you would like. But we'll have to see what happens in Detroit.
Let me get another question.
Yes, go. Yeah, please go.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that besides the fourth quarter, in some parts of this fourth quarter, game one's fourth quarter, and this one, the Pistons have outplayed the Knicks this series so far.
What you're saying, breaking it up by quarters? Yeah, they
No,
probably
if you
outplayed them
exclude
for
like the fourth quarter from game
I don't know,
one,
6 of the 8 quarters or something
yeah,
like
the
that.
Pistons have
Maybe,
outplayed them and outdogged them.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've outplayed. I don't think that's unfair or a hot take. I think they have outplayed them. I think the Pistons showed their youth, in game one. That's a game that I listen. The scoreboard is the scoreboard. I get that, but I look at that more as a game that they lost.
Then the Knicks won.
I do. I look at that as a game where a young team did not know how to handle the situation at the end, and they lost. But yes, I would agree with you. I think they have outplayed the Knicks by and large in the Garden for 2 games.
With that being said, Brian, we're hearing that when asked what the difference in the game was, Coach Tom Thibodeau said rebounding was the difference. And I mentioned the plus 15 difference in the game. I don't disagree with him on that at all whatsoever. Last thing I think for me is, can the Knicks take anything from the fact, and I agree with you, the Pistons lost game one more than the Knicks won it, but they had to do what they needed to do, not to take any credit away from them. However, if we're being fair, they almost lost this one again too in the fourth quarter. You had the 12-2 run by the Knicks in the fourth quarter. You saw a little bit of the inexperience from the Pistons, some stupid fouls by them as well too. Should the Knicks take anything from that we are able to come back against this team, or should they look at this and say, we've kind of played without food for 2 games?
Well, I mean, it's clear their young players can get rattled. I mean, Thompson was rattled. And Cade was great tonight, but I mean, they had him playing off the ball, and they have Dennis, trying to settle everybody down during the stretch. So I mean, clearly, this team is gettable if you're in striking distance late. And conversely, if you can be tied with 4 minutes, 5 minutes in the fourth quarter, I'm sure the Knicks probably feel good about their chances. If they're tied with 4 minutes left in game 3, I'm sure they feel great about their chances. If they can grab a couple of boards, which should not be a problem.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they also play Mitchell Robinson a little bit more. We'll see what the Knicks can do. They lose 100-94 to the Pistons in game 2. Series is now headed to Detroit. That is the great Bryan Lewis, sports reporter for the New York Post, joining us after every game. Brian, appreciate you. Go have a post-game meal. That should be a beef patty. That's what you should do.
I want to ask you guys, do you think Tibbs will blitz the ball out of Cade's hands more in game 3?
What was the question?
Would he blitz more?
Well, the problem is if that means Malik Beasley is gonna have a bunch of
he'll get his look. Yeah, you will give Beasley looks. You'll give Tobias more looks. You'll get that's.
I mean, if I'm picking my poison, it depends. Like, I think that's something you try, but I don't think you stick with it all game. If you look up at halftime and Detroit is 9 of 18 from 3 and Malik Beasley is 6 from 12, like I think you have to adjust from there and just take your chances with not letting Cade do whatever, but kind of just helping in spots. Added pressure when he's getting to the foul line, maybe double him when he's in the paint. But I think you have to play him straight up until they get to that point. If everyone else is firing, and if it's like tonight, and you're fine with blitzing him, and the results are that Detroit is 4 for 20 from 3, and you're up by 8 at halftime, then I think it's something that you can live with. And it's like, all right, let's just keep doing this until they make threes and then adjust from there.
Yeah, I think you mix and match. I think you want to make his life a little bit more of a living hell, like it was in game 1. But I think you gotta play your spots.
Yeah.
Look, Cade looked too comfortable tonight, Brian. I thought
this is what I'm saying.
Right,
I think he's too good to give him the same diet. I think it's obvious you can't just play him the same way every time down the court.
Too good. You got to show him some things he hasn't seen yet in the playoffs, and you got to keep him on his toes. That's what the playoffs is about. So I think they've got to mix it up. I think Tibbs will. I'm not worried about that, but also mixing it up, maybe find a couple more minutes for campaign. I'm not saying it'll be the difference, but it'll be nice. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying it would be nice. That's all.
I'm not mad at you. I agree.
Here's the positive: just split in Detroit, and then you got home court right back to Game 5.
Yeah, which is not impossible.
No, it's not. But hey, if they lose on Thursday, it'll be Cardiac City for the Knicks fans. Okay, it's gonna be Cardiac City for the Knicks fans.